Hey everyone, welcome back to Knights of the Nerds Table. I'm your host EJ, and today I'm going to chat to you about my favorite corner of the old DC universe, the Snyderverse. Before you go ahead and succumb to the anti-life equation, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more DC, Marvel, and other nerd content. A couple days ago now, James Gunn announced his new slate for DC, and with his slate comes a new era for the DC universe. But as Zod once said, the foundation has to be built on something. So the beloved world first helmed by Zack Snyder will be gone. No more Henry Cavill Superman. No more Ben Affleck Batman or Ray Fisher Cyborg. Possibly no Gal Gadot Wonder Woman. Jason Momoa will probably be back in some capacity, and maybe Ezra Miller, despite themselves, will be back. So really the only two characters that are for sure getting the boot are the pillars of the old DCEU, Batfleck, and Henry Cavill's Man of Steel. For those of us who love the old universe, particularly the Snyderverse, it's a tough blow. We DC fans have been through a lot. Since 2013, when the universe began, the biggest stories from DC were not on the big screen, but behind the scenes. Studio executives came and went. Warner Brothers was acquired by AT&T, then merged with Discovery, and all types of leadership changes occurred as a result. Zack Snyder was supposed to lead the DCEU, then Jeff Johns and John Burke, then Walter Hamada, and now James Gunn and Peter Safran. Each one had a different idea on how to lead the DC brand. Each one contradicted the one before. So with all this confusion, it's no wonder that a good amount of DC fans, myself included, yearn for the early days of the DCEU, movies that did have a consistent narrative before it was abandoned by Warner Brothers. The fans have labeled this headcanon as the Snyderverse. The Snyderverse narrative mainly contains 4 movies: Man of Steel, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition, Wonder Woman, and of course, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Sometimes Aquaman is included with this, but that movie came out after Snyder left and has some narrative differences, such as Mara's parents not being dead in the Aquaman universe. But James Wan, director of Aquaman, confirmed that he consulted with Zack Snyder while filming to make sure his version of the King of Atlantis lined up more with Zack than Joss Whedon. During this period of the DCEU, DC's focus was on a connecting narrative overlapping multiple movies. After the mixed reaction to BVS and a hack editing job / box office bomb of the theatrical cut of Justice League, Warner Bros. Moved on from that to making just standalone movies that are in the same universe. It was just a lot of wasted potential. I went through this in real time, fueled by my love of comics, my love of the Justice League Unlimited series, and the Dark Knight trilogy. I was ready for the DCEU, and I absolutely loved what I got. See, I was a Zack Snyder defender before it was actually popular. Man of Steel I still believe is the most underrated comic book movie of all time. The shots, especially that first flight scene, were beautiful. The action was godlike and super realistic, and the dialogue was regal and grandiose. I wanted to see a young Superman struggling with his humanity and finding his place in the cynical 21st century. What really appealed to me from a narrative perspective was the hidden fugitive angle of the story. Snyder treated Superman as an undocumented immigrant, attempting to keep his identity a secret from others, while fighting his generally good urge to help people, as seen in the school bus scene. From the beginning, Superman has always been propped up as truth, justice, and the American way. Man of Steel introduces Superman into a world where we don't agree what truth, justice, or the American way is. There is no consensus on it. The movie approaches the character through a libertarian lens. Instead of giving the whole "with great power comes great responsibility" talk, Paul Kent gives Clark the element of choice. Clark could decide to stand proud and declare who he is to the world. Or he could live a normal human life, live in the shadows, have a family, and be otherwise unimportant. Or he could be the example to the world of what aliens and other metahumans could do for the good of all. I perceived Clark to be struggling with the concept of being the model minority. That's the concept and burden that someone has to be a shining example of their race, so they can make integration of people that look like them a little easier. In Superman's case as other metahumans, and for me, that meant coming to terms with my African American heritage. I could feel the struggle of this refugee character feeling the weight of every decision he has to make in his forced coming out party when Zod comes down to Earth. Yeah, I've heard the criticisms. Paul Kent wasn't as inspiring as he needed to be. His death was needless, too much city destruction, and killing off Zod was against the character's morals. I didn't see it that way. I saw Paul Kent, a simple man from Kansas, worried about government involvement in his family's life, like any simple Kansas man in rural America would. I saw a dad so willing to sacrifice himself for his son that he gave his life so that Clark could remain hidden. I saw the beautiful and haunting images of a destroyed metropolis as just the aftermath of a realistic alien battle. I was always puzzled by this criticism because it's not like we haven't seen city destruction in the genre before. The Avenger movies had similar destruction, and so did the animated Justice League films. But I don't think anyone has truly shot this action as realistically and grounded as Zack Snyder had in this film. He even did what Joss Whedon couldn't do in showing what superheroics look like from the ground. Instead of showing a random Russian family, he used Perry White and 2 other Daily Planet employees to show the perils of the common man during these action sequences. The criticisms of the neck snap has always left me confused as well. It's like we all had collective amnesia and didn't remember that Christopher Reeve's Superman ended Zod's life way back in Superman 2, so it's not like it's out of touch for the character. There's also people who believe in the year of our Lord 2023 that Man of Steel Superman doesn't smile. Those people I can confidently say didn't watch the movie. But I was undeterred by these criticisms. Iron Man 3 came out the same year as Man of Steel did, and I remember distinctly thinking that Man of Steel was by far the superior movie. I was confident in the next entry into this universe. And here we are. We're about to approach the most controversial comic book movie of all time. The nerds on Twitter are still talking about this one. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. The critics, of which this film has many, will tell you the film is rushed, that DC tried to do too much at once. It's too dark, the plot is convoluted, and the Martha moment, yeah, we've heard it all. Some of those criticisms have some weight in the theatrical cut of this film, but I haven't watched that cut in forever, because I only watched the 3-hour Ultimate Cut. And I don't care what anyone says. This movie, Batman v Superman, is a masterpiece, and I get something different every time I watch it. From Clark's perspective, we see his naivete in his approach at being a reporter at the Planet. He had fallen to the general myths of American reporting. That is, it's about helping the little guy, standing up for truth, and fighting corruption.
Perry, when you assign a story, you're making a choice about who matters and who's worth it.
Good morning, Smallville.
The American conscience died with Robert, Martin, and John.
Perry White and Lois Lane basically laugh in his face. This isn't about helping the little guy. It's about writing what sells. This isn't about standing up for truth or fighting corruption. Not here, my guy. We kiss up to the powerful, sketchy philanthropists like Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor. We are here to prop them up and capitalize on our access to them. And throughout the movie, we keep having network news thrown in our face with the likes of real-life journalists like Nancy Grace, Charlie Rose, Anderson Cooper, and Jon Stewart. They all exploit the controversy that is Superman, and the constant cycle of network news gets a boost in ratings from their coverage. Supes really thought he could go do good without being shrouded in controversy and at the wills of the public and politics. Smallville is in the big city now, and he's hit with the ugliest parts of the American way. Sure, there are plenty of Superman supporters. Some people believe he's a good guy, and some people think he's even a god. But there are some who hate that he's loved and want to turn our Boy Scout into a criminal and throw dirt on the S. No one stays good in this world, and hiding in the shadows waiting to kick some Superman butt and give us the best Batman performance we've ever seen is Ben Affleck's Batman. Like Captain Ahab hunting down the great Moby Dick, Bruce Wayne is the fascist in this world, hunting down this immigrant who is clearly the other. He sees the world's ugliness, and the longer you stay in this game, the more likely you are to be corrupt.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
But he is not our enemy.
Not today. 20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen what promises are worth. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way?
He is beaten down by the loss of his Robin and 20 years of fighting criminals in Gotham. In the cynical world where Superman is beginning to lose hope, Batman is truly lost. He murders and brands criminals, all in his crusade to provide some type of control, some type of order in a world that is quickly making no sense.
They taught me the world only makes sense if you force it to.
The Martha moment is misunderstood. It's not the fact that their mothers share the same name that brings Batman to his senses. His whole mission from the beginning was to create a world where no little boy has to lose his mother and father to the senselessness of crime. In that moment, he was no longer the protector of humanity. He was becoming Joe Chill. And seeing the pureness of this person he saw as a threat to humanity, just wanting to save his mom, is the moment of clarity he needed. That's why he declares, "Martha, won't die tonight.
I make you a promise. Martha won't die tonight.
The sacrifice of Superman is also much criticized in this movie for being too early in Superman's journey. The death isn't really for us to feel that he's truly gone. Of course he can come back. He's Superman. What the death is here to signify is that he had finally found his place in this world of chaos. This crazy, overly capitalistic, consumer-based, corrupt, ungrateful little blue dot hadn't changed its stripes at all. But Superman needed to do this to show his loyalty to humanity. His Christ-like death, where he's dead for 3 films, then rises again and pierced with a spear, is to signify his love for the world. Men are still good, and his death prompts the world to mourn a controversial figure they didn't fully understand, which if you look at our history, with civil rights icons in particular, that is not uncommon. Unfortunately, a large amount of the audience didn't understand this movie the first time around, and the studio's overreaction to this film and the one that followed will lead to this universe's ultimate doom. In the coming months after the movie, while major reshoots of Justice League occurred, while Snyder took a step back to deal with his family tragedy, 2 DC movies came out. The David Ayer Suicide Squad came out the same year that BVS did, but while it was received better than BVS, the movie was obviously chopped up in the editing room. I remember liking it at first. I mean, Will Smith, Margot Robbie, and Viola Davis were great. It just seemed a little too bland, and the editing was definitely uneven. It looked like it was trying to be too much like their Marvel counterparts, Guardians of the Galaxy. Wonder Woman 2017 fared much better and was seen as a revival of the franchise. It still stayed in tone with the rest of the DCEU, and Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot really knocked that one out of the park. We then waited to see what the Zack Snyder, Joss Whedon Justice League would look like. And I remember leaving the theater in 2017 just relieved that it looked so much like a Marvel film, so that my Marvel-loving friends would stop ragging me on my universe. Wasn't for me, but I hoped others would like it. And I was wrong. No one liked this Frankenstein version of this team-up, and it became the lowest-grossing DC film to date at the time, losing the studio anywhere from $60 million to $100 million. This is where my fandom in DC began to waver, to be honest. I became less excited with each release, as the movies became more and more disconnected. I was much more interested in what Zack Snyder was dropping on Vero and the growing Snyder Cut movement. It wasn't just on Twitter. There were change.orgs, YouTube channels like the Nerd Queens and Chris Wong pushing the movement forward. Fans showed up at Comic-Con with signs, buying billboards, and even had a plane fly over Warner Bros. Studio with a banner requesting to release the Snyder Cut. It was a crazy time, man. Even when Warner Bros. Was bought by AT&T, fans called in to request the fabled Snyder Cut. Snyder, for his part, kept the movement going by dropping bits of knowledge about how his film differed from the theatrical release. And every Vero drop from Zack inspired the fans to push harder for his version of the film. Martian Manhunter is in this movie? Cool. Darkseid? Love it. No weird jokes about brunch? Even better. People thought we were insane. I mean, the closest thing to this was the Donner cut of Superman 2, but that took decades to get out. But it didn't matter to us how slim our chances were to have a studio recut a film that they already didn't really believe in. At the very least, though, the money raised from this movement went to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in honor of Zack Snyder's daughter, Autumn. To this day, the Snyder Cut movement has raised over $500,000 for suicide prevention. If you would like to follow in the steps of their charity, I'm going to post a link below in the description so you can donate as well. But yeah, it felt good to be a part of something so positive no matter how far-fetched it was, fighting for the vision of the creator and mental health. The movement gained momentum when during the press run of Aquaman, Jason Momoa began to talk about Zack's version of Justice League and how it differed from the theatrical cut.
Because in Zack's cut, we had it where I was with Volko and Mara, and I say that I have to go home, and they say there's this force coming and that I need to help. And I'm like, I'm going home to see my dad, and so I get in the back of a pickup truck and pound a bottle of something, and yeah, absolutely. But I've seen it, so I've seen the Snyder Cut, so
it made fans even more hungry for this version. In December of 2019, Zack dropped a picture of the film still in the box showing the runtime at 214 minutes, proving its existence. Later on, out of nowhere, the main cast members of Justice League, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ray Fisher, and Jason Momoa all tweeted their support for the movement and the movie to be released. Release the Snyder Cut. That's what they were saying. That's when I and many other fans realized that we were so close. On May 20th of 2020, Zack Snyder finally revealed that the true follow-up to his trilogy would be dropped on HBO Max, formerly titled Zack Snyder's Justice League. And what's there to say about this 4-hour epic? All the sanitized Whedon quips were gone, and we were left with what many would consider to be one of the best comic book movies of all time. There are so many iconic scenes. Wonder Woman has never looked better in combat than in her opening scene saving those kids from those terrorists. Steppenwolf's invasion of Themyscira. There's the old gods fighting Darkseid for the first time. Barry Allen breaking glass and saving Iris. Cyborg's origin story and his first flight. The Justice League attempting to restrain or revive Superman. Batman telling Cyborg that flight was his nature and to have faith.
You fixed it. It wanted to fly. Flight is its nature. Yours too.
Superman's not impressed line. The Flash running into the Speed Force. Martian Manhunter reveal. Darkseid shows up. Joker and Batman finally have an interaction. Etc, etc, etc. It's a gigantic DC film that doesn't even falter under its own weight of 4 hours. It's exactly what old DC fans wanted from a toned perspective. It doesn't have as much to say as the two preceding films, but it's mainly a celebration of Batman and Superman's arcs while giving new characters like Aquaman, Flash, and Wonder Woman their own fulfilling arcs at the end of the movie. We all struggle, we all have demons to fight, but no matter how many demons you fight in whatever hell you're in, if we are united, we can fight it together. I remember going on Facebook and seeing people who had previously criticized Snyder's work praising this more traditional superhero flick. Even people who I didn't even know liked the genre were enjoying it. It felt like vindication, because for so long we were told that these movies that we liked weren't the right movies to love, or that we didn't understand these true DC characters. For a bit, just a moment there, it seemed like more people got it. Got us. Of course, we wish the story stopped there. Or I could tell you that this inspired DC to return to their original slate and continue the Snyder arc, with the obvious ask for sequels in the prologue. But that of course didn't happen. As calls to restore the Snyderverse increased, Snyder and his fans' relationship with Warner Brothers and DC executives soured, as it was clear that they wanted to move on from the Snyderverse and introduce their own interpretations of these characters. The writing has been on the wall for some time, and even when Warner Brothers changed leadership again, as it was acquired by Discovery, the new heads of DC seem more apt to a soft reboot and introduce their version of DC. This is a disappointment to a lot of us, and I get it, more than most. But even in the comics, creators are removed all the time and other people are given their run at these characters. It hurts that we didn't get to see the conclusion of Zack Snyder's story. But guys, we got the Snyder Cut, and that in and of itself is one of the most gigantic fan triumphs that literally no one can take from you or me. Zack has more stories coming out on Netflix with his Army of the Dead franchise and Rebel Moon, which is coming out later this year. There is a Snyderverse. It's just not the DC world that we would have wanted. If you have some curiosity as to how the story was supposed to end, go check out this fan event entitled Project Justice League on YouTube. The Snyder faithful have come together to create a live comic based off the old storyboards of what Justice League was supposed to continue as. And let me tell you, it's epic. If this were to continue, the Justice League was supposed to continue to grow and become more united. As hinted in Justice League, Lois Lane is pregnant and Clark is building a life with her. But in the shadows, Lex Luthor is building the Injustice League with Black Manta from Aquaman, Dr. Poison from Wonder Woman, and other villains to summon Darkseid to Earth. Darkseid invades Earth and fries up Lois Lane and her unborn child in front of Superman. In a moment of weakness, Superman succumbs to the anti-life equation and becomes a servant of Darkseid, destroying the rest of the League. Batman leads a team of survivors and fights along unlikely allies like Will Smith's Deadshot to attempt to save this world from Superman and Darkseid's rage. Years go by, and they finally send Flash back in time to warn Bruce Wayne of Darkseid's plan to cripple Superman. Batman gives the ultimate sacrifice and saves Lois Lane, preventing the dreaded Nightmare timeline. Inspired by Batman's example, the whole DC universe from Amanda Waller's Suicide Squad to Shazam and Black Adam, and of course the Justice League unite with the world's armies, forming the unity like days of old. They succeed in driving off Darkseid's invasion, fighting together as one. Looking at Project Justice League is a bittersweet way of honoring this universe. Some fans are planning another trending event, trying to rally the Armada and use the old ways. The new hashtag is Sell Zack Snyder's Justice League to Netflix, which is dubious for many reasons and just really won't make sense for either party. But don't tell Zack Snyder diehards that. They've done the impossible already, and they're trying to make lightning strike twice. All power to them. But as for me, I'm ready to see what Gunn is cooking. I hope DC will have brighter days ahead where we all enjoy these characters for decades to come. But until that day comes when we officially turn the page, I want to take one last look at the Age of Heroes. Look at our boys. They look good, don't they? Thanks for watching Knights of the Nerds Table. What are your feelings of the Snyder trilogy? What are your hopes for the soft reboot that Gunn is planning? What were your favorite parts of this old DCU? Comment below with your thoughts, and I can't wait to talk more with you about DC and Rebel Moon later this year. Have a great one. Night out.